Good morning, everyone. This is the session Custom Apps and Integrations in K-12. Just so you know who I am, here's some information about me both while I'm at work and when I'm not at work. And because of everything that I want to try to cover, that's all the time I have to talk about that. I will say, despite any similarity in appearance, I have never played a doctor on television. But if you say, "Talk to me, Goose," I'll stop and talk to you in the hallway. So who is Cross IT? This is a sponsor session, so I have to talk a little bit about who we are and what we do. We are a regional IT firm that provides cross-platform support for networks, desktops, server infrastructure, those kinds of things. We also do custom software development, which is the area where I work in. And our goal is to apply leading-edge technologies and custom software solutions that provide the best results, both short and long term for you. We're not looking to do things that are cookie cutter. We're going to build something that is custom to you to make sure that it works the way that you work instead of you having to work for it. We are located in Greenville, Pennsylvania, which is about halfway between Pittsburgh and Erie along the Interstate 79 corridor, if you're familiar with that part of the state. But our clients do extend outside of that region. We go as far north as Buffalo, over to Baltimore, Maryland, and down into Florida. Our clients come from a broad cross-section of different industries, both small and medium-sized businesses, manufacturing, a few medical offices, some local governments, and then education, which again is another area that we're going to be focusing on today once we get into the case study, both K-12 as well as higher ed. Here's a list of some of the services that we offer. So if you see anything there that's of interest to you, please come down and visit us at our booth downstairs in the sponsor area, and we'll be happy to talk to you about that. And we tried to sum up what it is that we do with the motto that's on our website, and it's just computer consulting done simply, done right. So hopefully after your experience with us, you come away with the same thing. Now, one of our specialties is custom software development, and we work using the Claris platform. In fact, we're one of Claris's partners, and like I said, that's what brings us here today. So how many of you have heard of Claris? Okay, how many of you have heard of FileMaker? Okay. How many of you hate it when the speaker asks for a show of hands in a session? Okay. No. Yeah, so Claris is FileMaker. It's always been a part of Apple for over 3 decades. Some people have known that, some people didn't know that. If you're familiar, way back in the day, there was a program called Claris Works that became, I believe, Apple Works. And then when Steve Jobs returned to Apple, they were consolidating things and fine-tuning things. And so FileMaker Pro, which was one of the products that made up Claris Works, was spun off into its own company because they realized that FileMaker was unique in that it was a relational database and it was more of a business-focused application rather than something that a regular consumer would use. It was also work cross-platform already, both on Mac and Windows, and so that's when FileMaker Inc. was born. And then through the rest of the 90s and much of the 2000s, they've continued to innovate and improve that particular platform. Back in 2019 is when they rebranded, so they were Claris, they became FileMaker, now they're back to being Claris Inc. The whole time they've been a wholly owned subsidiary of Apple. And like I said, that's why we're here and want to talk to you about what Claris allows you to do through their low-code products. So what is low-code? Well, pro-code is what you would expect, whether it's an enterprise-level application or something that runs natively on Mac, Windows, or iOS. But then you move into the no-code or low-code space, and that is all about giving people and individuals the opportunity to build software solutions without having to have a ton of experience in programming. That's where you take information where, like the subject matter expert, because you're the person that's doing the work all day, you need an application that's going to help improve your job experience and let you do your job better. Well, if we can give you the tools to build the app that you need to do your job, it's probably going to be better than something you're going to get off the shelf. And this idea of this low code or no code allows you to do that because a lot of the building blocks are already there. You can pull them in, and that is what Claris is all about, is working in this low code space. Here's an example. This is just a simple form for, as you can see, it's a fleet time report that somebody has had to fill in. And of course, once the information is filled in on this sheet of paper, it doesn't mean anything to anybody until somebody takes this sheet of paper and does the data entry into the enterprise system or whatever it happens to be. Well, with Claris FileMaker, you're able to build an app that runs on an iOS device, take that information and have it directly entered in, and then all of a sudden that information is synced back to the server, whether it's automatically or on some type of schedule, so that the person that needs this data now that the time report has been submitted has access to it. So that's just a brief glimpse of what this idea of low code or no code allows you to do. All right. In the Claris platform, there's 3 different products. The cornerstone continues to be Claris FileMaker, which, like I said, has existed for over 30 years. It's a rapid application development program. It's a relational database, has a very robust layout tool set where you can build your data entry and report layouts very quickly and easily. It also allows you to do scripting for automating of tasks. And they've continued, again, to iterate on that product to where if you need something that's more of a pro code type experience, FileMaker Pro allows you to do that. The product that was introduced in 2019 is Claris Connect, which is a way to automate workflows and connect different web services together, pass information from one silo to another without having to do a lot of programming because of the steps that they give you to be able to do that. We're going to come back to Claris Connect because that's going to be the focus of what we're talking about here today. And then the newest part of the Claris platform is Claris Studio, which is a web-based form development tool where you can create forms, send them out to users and things that are outside of your organization to collect that anonymous information and then bring that information back in and then do something with it. If you've already visited our booth area downstairs and signed up for our giveaway, you filled out a Claris Studio form. If you haven't, I encourage you to do so because we're giving away a portable speaker or a Star Wars Lego set. So there you go. So coming back to Claris Connect, it is an integration platform as a service, or iPaaS is the acronym that they use. And what this does is it allows you to connect different web services through the APIs. So you don't have to try to figure out how to get your system to talk to this API or figure out how to have 2 different APIs, those application program interfaces, talking to each other. You're able to use the tools and the steps that are in Claris Connect to trigger an event and then run through this flow to have that information happen. Like if an email comes in and to your sales team and you want to make sure they get alerted to that, and it creates a message in the Slack channel that they share. So things like that is what you're able to automate. Now for the bulk of our time, we're going to be looking at what Claris Connect can do in the area of K-12 education. So schools use a lot of different systems. And what Claris has done, because they provided me some of the information here, is that during the pandemic, the number of apps that K-12 was using exploded. But then IT directors were left with, okay, we've got all of these products, how do we get them to talk to each other? And so it became a bit of a nightmare. And again, that's where Claris Connect is able to then step into the gap and help push information back and forth to where it needs to be. Okay. Now, like I said, we've been talking about Claris Connect, which has a number of different connectors for, different, like WooCommerce, Slack, Microsoft Office, many different things. But the one we want to specifically focus on is the Apple School Manager connector that they've provided. If you're not familiar with Apple School Manager, that allows teachers and IT directors and districts to ensure that the students get the best experience possible. Because when the teacher comes in, if you're in a school with a one-to-one program where everybody has an iPad, the teacher does not want to spend the first 15 minutes of class figuring out, okay, has everybody been able to log on? And do you have the app that we're going to need that day? Well, Apple School Manager is able to ensure that students that are in a specific class for Mrs. Smith have the application the application that Mrs. Smith wants to use that day to help teach whatever point is trying to be made. Okay, and so of course the only way Apple School Manager can do that is if it has the correct data as far as who the students are, who the instructors are, and what the roster is, like who has class in third period versus who is in the class in sixth period, that kind of thing. And so that's where the Apple School Manager connector in Claris Connect can fill in the gaps, where it's able to take the information that's already in the student information system. That data gets pulled into Claris Connect, and then Claris Connect is able to work its magic, that is the technical term, to work its magic and then pull that information and push it into Apple School Manager. Okay, I know PowerSchool, Skyward, there's a number of student information systems that Claris Connect will work with. Any ones that use the one roster data format are going to work with the Apple School Manager connector here in Claris Connect. One of the things that Claris Connect does is it takes whatever data format that is coming from the student information system, and it takes it and then it goes ahead and formats it in the data format that Apple School Manager is expecting. So you don't have to try to figure out how to do that. It's already going to be done for you. And then there's a few other things, as you can see there, that we're going to take a look at some of the details. The first one is that you can filter it. Instead of having an export that you have to delete rows from or something like that, you can actually, as you set up your sync between your student information system and Apple School Manager, you can say, well, these elementary schools are the only ones that use Apple devices in the classroom, so we only need to sync information about the elementary schools. So you can adjust those in the filtering. This is something I believe is relatively new that they've introduced into the connector, because several of the schools that we've worked with, this was not an option, but it is now. So they've got a viable product, but they're continuing to iterate on it and make additional improvements. You can also fix the data issues and validate it before it even gets into Apple School Manager, before it's uploaded, because they are actually using the same validation engine that Apple School Manager uses, but they're able to catch the mistakes and things before it actually gets up to Apple School Manager. So here's what the interface would look like in Apple School Manager. You can see there's a couple options here to patch the errors and prevent duplicates. If you're familiar with Apple School Manager, that is the mapping layout that they give you in Apple School Manager, showing the connections between the staff and the classes and the students and all that. So you have the option here to patch errors to make sure that every class is correct, that the teacher that was scheduled to teach the class is still teaching the class, that a student hasn't withdrawn and then all of a sudden you've got bad data in there. It's able to check for a lot of those things. And then it also will work to prevent duplicate accounts from being introduced into Apple School Manager by doing checks by names and email addresses and stuff like that. One of the examples that Claris provided is they were doing a rollout at a district, and they had set up the flow, that's the Claris Connect term, the flow to get the information from the student information system into Apple School Manager. And the first time they ran it without any patching, there were 21,000 errors, which is pretty alarming. When they enabled the patching features to fix the errors before the information got into Apple School Manager and ran it again, there were 9 errors, which is a nice improvement. And what they discovered is they looked at it more. The reason why there was that one error is that there was one student that had the incorrect email address. There was some type of typo in the email address. And so, Claris Connect couldn't fix that, but it was at least able to identify it. And so they were able to then move forward and get that information imported. So Claris has done some studies and have determined that 95% of the installs that they have that are using this Claris Connect connector, 95% are using at least one of these patching or options that are available, and the majority use all of them to make sure that data is clean as possible that's going into Apple School Manager, and they consider it an essential. The patching is optional, but why would you, right? You want to make sure that you can use it. Okay, there's some reporting that you're able to see beyond what Apple School Manager or even your student information system would give you. That's actually a little bit more robust than those. It shows like the sync history each time this process occurs, so you can see what is happening. You can get the visibility into what errors may have occurred, and then when you jump over into the advanced settings, when you would switch from your Apple School Manager interface into the actual Claris Connect interface, you can get some even more detailed history, set up those advanced patch settings, and then configure some stops for your testing. Because like I said, it's called a flow, so there are places where you can branch the flow or stop the flow as you're going through and testing it as you get it set up. So, is it a viable product? Well, Apple, working together with Claris, has rolled this out at 9,000 different school districts around the world, and they are continuing to iterate on it. A lot of the feedback that they get as part of the rebranding going from FileMaker to Claris as they switched from a waterfall project management to an agile method, which allows them to iterate faster and reprioritize things that they're fixing. So the search for duplicates is actually one thing that came out of user feedback that they were then able to put into their offering. And so they're constantly listening to customer feedback to continue to make improvements. Okay, so how much would you pay for this? Well, if you have an Apple School Manager at your district, the Claris Connect connector for Apple School Manager is included. There's no additional fees for the service. There's no additional fees for the setup because they want to make sure you have as good an experience with the Apple products that you have rolled out at your district. And they want you to make sure you get your investment out. If that's something that is of interest to you, you can either talk to myself or my colleague Dawn over there. You can also contact your local Apple SE or sales rep, and they will be able to put you into contact with the success team at Claris to make sure that you succeed in rolling out Claris Connect for Apple School Manager. So, pretty cool. All right. So the rest of our time, like I said, we wanted to introduce that because even though we may not necessarily be involved in it, we just think it's such a cool and amazing product that we wanted to let people know about it. Okay. So for the rest of the time, I just want to spend some time on this case study. One of our clients is a local school district there in the Pittsburgh area, and they are using all three components of the Claris platform, and just wanted to show that to you so you can get a taste for what is possible with the Claris platform. So we'll start with Claris FileMaker. And let me just give you a brief history. FileMaker was actually an internal tool that Cross IT used. And the reason why was that we had several network administrators at the time, this is mid-2000s, that had Apple certifications. And so one of the things that they would do is that in our region, they would often be contracted to go into school districts and help set up Xserves. If you'll join me in a moment of silence for the Xserve. Okay. All right, so they would set up the Xserves, and of course it was more than just installing the hardware. It was then creating the Open Directory accounts that were needed. And so we were working with a number of different student information systems that we had to get information out of, and then we needed to create the accounts, assign passwords, and generate the information that we could then import into Open Directory to create those accounts that just happened to be colon-separated format. And so that FileMaker was the tool that we used. We brought the information in, we were able to massage the data, and then kick out an export file that could then be imported into Open Directory. Well, the New Kensington Arnold School District was one of our clients that we had done this for. And they're just a little bit about them. Their physical location, they're northeast of downtown Pittsburgh along the Allegheny River. And the district encompasses approximately 5 square miles, so it's not a huge district by any stretch. You can see it here on the map. It's about a 19-mile drive from PNC Park in downtown Pittsburgh up along the Allegheny River to get to New Kensington. The district itself, they have 280 staff members and faculty members, and then approximately 2,000 total students. The large majority, of course, are in-person students, but then they have a handful that are cyber students. So the tech team is managing approximately 2,100 iPads and 300 laptops and computers. All right. So the Claris FileMaker for them, they saw the tool that we were using. They really liked it and said, we want to be able to use that too so that we can be updating Open Directory every year when we get, a new school year rolls around, we can advance grades and things of that nature. So we help them do that. And then over the years, we have updated the file so we can then export a file that could be used by Active Directory. We've made additional updates and changes to, like when home directory structure has changed or they've changed email providers and needed a different email address. So we've accomplished those. The current process, there's a manual export from the student information system. That file is pulled into FileMaker. There's a couple button clicks to run the scripts that are needed to process that data. And then it spits out a file that can then be manually exported and then imported using the Dovestone tool to get those accounts either created or updated in Active Directory. The tech director usually runs it a couple of times a week just to catch as students, either come in or leave the district, so they're keeping, Active Directory updated. So here's a couple of the layouts. For those of you that are familiar with FileMaker, I ask you to be kind. This file was built, I believe, in FileMaker 9. They're now on FileMaker 20 as the version. And so this file still looks like it was built in FileMaker 9, even though there's been a lot of updates and things. It's on the list to change, but we're so busy innovating on all of the other stuff that this file is kind of stuck in the mid-2000s as far as its appearance. But there's a couple tabs there. You can see we're pulling information in on the user. We have a tab here that lets us see the graduation year and grade level of the student. A tab here that we're able to preview the calculation of what's going to be exported to Active Directory so that we can see, did the person get into the proper OU and those kinds of things that helps us potentially spot an error. Oops, sorry, I clicked the wrong way. And then we also do some automatic group assignments based on graduation year and homeroom and building, things of that nature. There's a few other tabs, but you guys can't hear about that until you're older. Okay, so just within the last couple of years, they approach us with a new problem because the school has implemented a one-to-one program where they're providing iPads for all students. And so it started out with the distribution and collection was on sheets of paper that looked a lot like this. The one thing that really scares me on this form is where the student ID was to be filled in. Someone has written a note, I think. So anybody that's worried about data conformity and you see I think on anything, you start to question it. So here's the back of the form. And then when the collection happened, there was another sheet of paper that was filled out and then stapled to the original form from the handout. Then all of those were organized into 3-ring binders. I just had to share the picture of the 3-ring binders that we found in the box. And then the tracking of device assignments was then handled in an Excel file where they would go through all of those forms, put in the student ID that is correct, they think, and the serial number of the device. And so that's how they were tracking. They realized there was a better way, so they contacted us to see what can be done. And we said, well, we can expand the solution to include an asset management module. And so we started with a new file that was optimized for use on an iPad, because if you're going to be managing devices, an iPad is a great way to manage iPads, because with the camera, you can capture photos, you can do barcode scanning and everything. So it just was a natural fit. Now we're able to pull the device information from Jamf. This particular district uses Jamf as their MDM, so all of their hardware inventory was in Jamf, so they didn't have to go back and re-inventory things. We were just able to pull that information into FileMaker so that we could look and use it there. And then from there, it was just a matter of developing the scripts and the layouts to handle the check-in and check-out process. And now the process for adding devices is pretty straightforward. The newly purchased iPads automatically appear in Apple School Manager when they place the order with Apple. And then the devices are assigned to a pre-stage in Jamf by the tech team, so they know what configuration to get. And then the tech team performs that first initialization, and when that happens, the device becomes an active device in Jamf. And so then we have a server-side script running in FileMaker that gathers all of that information on active devices twice a day. It either updates existing devices or creates new devices as they are added. And then once that happens, the tech department is then able to print out a QR label that goes on the back of each device. Interestingly, they weren't able to do anything directly out of Jamf, but once we got the information, it took me about 15 minutes probably to set up a label to be able to print out the barcode that they wanted to have on the back of their devices once we had that information in FileMaker. So this is the form that is also generated during the handout process. It has some information here at the top, obviously, about the student, as far as what their ID is, what their password has been assigned to be. It has a barcode on it where they're able to scan that. So the teachers hand this out during the period whenever they're going to be going down to get their devices at the beginning of the year. And then here at the bottom, it has the additional setup information that once the student gets the device, gets back to the classroom, they can follow through the steps to get on the network and get signed in and all of those kinds of things. And for those of you that noticed the name of the student that I used here as my example, that when you're looking for a way to manage iPads, this is the way. Okay, so we have here a video of what this distribution process looks like. So you can see the file looks a whole lot different now that we've using some newer tools. We've got the student, we've got some information about them, we've got information about what iPad they currently have there by serial number, and some information here as far as when it went into service. Has it been checked in or checked out based on the icons? Go to the menu, select we want to distribute the iPad. Starts by scanning the QR code that is on that sheet of paper. So they scan it. Then the system is able to check and see, did the student turn in everything at the end of last year that they were supposed to? If so, they get all of the stuff again this year in the fall when we hand it out. And then from there, you just pick up an iPad off the pile, scan that QR code for the iPad, and then it creates this journal record. So you have a link between the student and the device. You can indicate what the condition is. And then if everything looks good, you can just click continue, and now you're ready to go. This took a process that took a very long period of time to where they can go through an entire class of 25 to 30 kids in about 5 minutes. So teachers love that because they're disrupting the class time a lot less than they had been. The collection process is very similar. Again, back to our menu here, select collection. And then we can skip scanning anything about the student, because as long as they have the device in front of them, we just go ahead and scan that barcode. It pulls up the journal record that was created, and now we just say what is the condition of a device coming back in. You'll notice that there is an extra button there at the top to whether either confirm or indicate that there's a mismatch in the serial number. This was in there whenever we were converting from that Excel sheet to actual data that's in FileMaker, and that was a way for them to confirm that they are getting the device back that they think the student had, or record the serial number so the student gets credited for returning a device. So that's what that's about. And then once you hit continue, you're back and ready to collect the next device. Now, as we went along, we realized, okay, we want to hand them out at the beginning of the year, collect them at the end of the school year, but there's a chance that a student may damage a device somewhere along the way. And so that's where we needed to come up with this idea of being able to swap out. So we just merged the two processes. Again, back to our menu, we're going to do a mid-year swap. Start by scanning the device that's coming back. Again, you don't have to worry about the charger and the cable because the student's getting another device this time. The case is fine, but something has happened to the iPad, so we're going to go ahead and indicate that it has major damage. Now, because it is damaged, it probably makes sense. We may want to grab a picture and document that for that parent that would say, well, my child would never. That way you can get a picture of exactly what it looks like. And again, this is stuff that's already built in because of how FileMaker Go works with the iOS. We can jump right out to the camera, take a picture of, the corner or the screen or whatever happens to highlight the damage. We collect that, we save it, and now we have the photo along with the other information in our journal for this particular sign out. If you try to continue without giving some more information about the damage type, it's going to alert you to say, hey, I need more information, and there's a spot for additional details if warranted. Now, the system will check and see whether that student purchased the optional insurance. If the insurance was purchased, it will apply the insurance payment to the repair of that particular device and say, okay, that is settled. The student can now receive a device so they can continue with their learning experience. And then from there, you just scan the replacement iPad that the student is going to get. And then everything else from there is the same as you would see for the distribution process where they record it, other than obviously the student already has the charger and the cable. So that is the swap process. Now there are things in there where if there is no insurance, it will stop the process, but the IT department has the ability to override and still give the student a device because the goal was not to take devices away from students because you want to continue their learning, but you still want to hold them responsible. And so that's what we have set up for them. And so congratulations, you're all now older, so I can talk about these other tabs. The one is we have the devices tab where the IT department can get in and see what device this particular student has. As you can tell there's places for multiple devices. It's usually a one-to-one, but because this handles both staff and students, staff members are probably going to have both a laptop and an iPad, so you would see the multiple devices. And there are special circumstances where a student may have several devices, so you can see that here. And then you also see the history. Because we're capturing everything in those journal records, you can see, okay, what devices did the student have? Are they getting one device per year, or are they getting 3 or 4 devices per year? And maybe we need to have a talk with somebody's parents about how they're treating the technology that the school is giving them. So just a quick view of that. All right, so that's all of the FileMaker stuff. Now, back to Claris Connect. There's a couple things that Claris Connect can do that we did not touch on because, like I said, the major focus was with Apple School Manager. And that is you're able to set up webhooks. And the school here uses Skyward as its SIS. And Claris Connect, as I mentioned earlier, it can connect to any SIS that uses that one roster data format. And so what we've done is we've actually replaced that existing import-export process. And so we were able to set up Claris Connect flows using one roster webhooks so that we can get the active students via an API call. So instead of having to worry about we've got a file that was exported, now we've got to import it into FileMaker, we can schedule a script to run the API calls to get all of that student information directly into FileMaker without anybody clicking a button. But along with that, we're also able to pull more information. Typically, at least our experience has been, is if you want to modify a default export that a student information system does, you just call the company and pull out your checkbook. Okay. It's not very easy to do, but using these webhooks, you have access to a lot of that information on the teachers, the classes, the courses, and then the enrollment in each of those classes. And what that has done, that's allowed us to expand the information that's getting tracked in FileMaker and then improve how we're able to report on things. So here's the example of the webhook. This is the Claris Connect interface. You can either sign in with your Claris ID or your Apple School Manager ID. In this case, it's the regular Claris ID. And we have 6 flows that have been set up to go from Skyward to FileMaker. And that is because we have set up a webhook for each of the different entities that we want to get out of Skyward into FileMaker. And it starts by setting up the webhook, where you give the webhook a name. And I'm just going to go ahead and recreate the student webhook to get students. We create that. And then as we scroll to the bottom, you'll see that it has given the webhook with the default name, and then incorporates the name of the webhook that we gave it. And then it has an API key as well as an app ID that we can use when we set up the API to actually make the call to the webhook. And it gives us an example of what that curl syntax should be when we make the call. And then a couple of things here that we want to make sure are changed. We certainly want to use authentication. And then because we want to get data back, we're going to go ahead and turn that on as well. So that completes the setup of the webhook. And now we can now use that webhook in one of our Claris Connect flows. So here I'm going to go ahead and create a new flow. You can see there's some utilities and things that you're able to do, and it starts with this incoming HTTP request. And so we just go ahead and choose our webhook. And there's our Skyward Students webhook with the URL. We go ahead, and that is the triggering event, because every Connect flow starts with some type of triggering event, and then we're able to go ahead and have different actions that follow that. So we'll go ahead and add an action. And here we can use the one roster, and there's the different actions that you have with one roster. You can see we can get a single course or get multiple courses. Same thing for students and faculty. And all of that. And here we want to go ahead and get all students. Because the one roster account has already, that information has already been saved for a previous one, we don't have to re-enter it here. It also allows you to create a flow or enter that information that lets somebody else use it, but they don't necessarily know the credentials because that part is hidden, which is nice. And then from here, we just do some additional setup. And all of the information that comes in is set up as a JSON object. So then you go through and pick the pieces of the JSON that are for the number of records that you're going to get and the offset that you're going to use. There's a few more things that are optional that you can do programmatically when you make the API call to the webhook. In this case, we didn't have to worry about any of that. And then the last thing that we have to do is we're getting the students, but now we need to pass it back. So we'll go back in, add one more action. Go back to our HTTP, and then we just reply with JSON data. When you're setting up a Claris Connect flow, you can use data from any previous step. Typically, it's always the step right before, which it is in this case. And if I look at the users that is coming back from the one roster, it looks like that is an array of student information. So I can go ahead and say, okay, I want you to send that JSON back as part of the call. So it's not a very complex flow by any stretch. It's just the 3 steps. Then we just go ahead and give that flow a name. And then make sure that it is enabled so that we can go ahead and use it. And let's see. So there's our new students. And then we just go ahead and turn it on, and we are ready to go. So that is from the Claris Connect side of things. So we can go ahead and switch, and just a brief example of what it looks like under the hood in FileMaker. This is our users database where we've set up a script here at the beginning that does our authentication for us, where we're setting some information into variables that can be then used by the different scripts, where we're using that password as well as the app ID, also the default URL for all of the webhooks that are being used. And then from that point, we're able to then call that script to get the authentication that we need. We'll drop down here to the student script in a moment. And we are updating the students. And so what you see here is where we're setting our record count. We're going to get 200 students at a time, starting with 0. We run the script to get those entities from Claris Connect. That brings back the result as that JSON object, and then we set some variables here to then parse out the objects that are in that array and do the count. And then if it's come back successful, then we just set up some steps to go ahead and loop through and pull out each piece of information that's coming back as part of the API call to Skyward through Claris Connect using that webhook. And then we can create the records as needed or update them as needed in the system, which again, do it automatically instead of having to have somebody click a couple of buttons, which isn't hard, but if you get distracted by other things, it may get missed for a few days, where this is something you could have run every night so that you know when you come in the next morning, things are up to date. And that's where begin, because of this additional information that we're able to pull in, we actually now have the student schedule listed here in FileMaker. And where that comes in handy is on the form, which you didn't get to see the bottom just because of how it cut it off, is that we have this area here where it shows what class the particular student is in. And the reason why this was important for New Kensington is that in elementary school, they do it by homeroom because everybody's in that same room every day. But in the high school, they decided, well, everybody has to have a history class. And that way we're only disrupting one history class as opposed to pulling 3 or 4 kids from 10 different classes if we do it by homeroom at a particular time of the day. But then that also meant if you had these sheets of paper, you either had to print them out and then have somebody sort them, which would be a real pain if you were sorting 700 sheets of paper for the number of students, where because we now had their history information, we were actually able to sort it and collate it and print it by teacher, by class, so they could just take the stack of papers up and hand it to the student without too much trouble. So. And like I said, we've already alluded to this, but the other thing that you're able to do, of course, is to go from Skyward directly into Apple School Manager. Again, this uses the Apple School Manager credentials for login. Okay, and part of that is because with Apple School Manager, Claris Connect, at least access to that one connector is free. And we've already talked about this, but I think it's worth reiterating, is it removes the heavy lifting because it validates the source zip file that is uploaded from Skyward. It extracts the data, it formats it into the CSV format that's needed by Apple School Manager. And then it validates that data before sending it to Apple School Manager, and then you can choose it to patch it if necessary. And then if it finds problems, it's going to update the zip file before sending it to ASM. I know from experience this is awesome, just because we've iterated on their original FileMaker file over the years, that we've caught most of the problems where if there's an extra space or a carriage return that somehow came over in the information from the student information system, we've been able to filter that out. But it was certainly a few growing pains as we figured out, okay, somebody decided to put this character in, and now we need to take that out so that there's no problems. Where this is already built in, so you don't have to think about what scenarios do I need to plan for. So let's take a look at what that setup is. So again, we'll sign in to Claris Connect with the Apple School Manager. Now this, I will point out, this demo is from the Claris Connect standpoint, not from the interface that you would see in Apple School Manager. But there's one flow in our project. Has a few more steps, as you can see, but it's not as daunting as it looks because some of them are repeated. So we can go ahead and dive into that, and it starts with the file upload to Claris Connect. That is our triggering event, and that is configured in the student information system to use the SFTP site and upload the file to it. So anytime that SFTP file changes, it's going to trigger the flow. So here we want to start by validating the zip file, which is one of the actions there, as you can see, is to validate the OneRoster zip files. And again, here's where we're selecting what we're acting on, which is something from step number 1. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and extract the CSV files from the zip file. Again, here in our configuration, we're just using the file path from step number 2. We don't have to specify the individual files, which is nice. Then we're going to go ahead and use one of the Apple School Manager actions to go ahead and format the data for Apple School Manager using the Apple School Manager account. Again, grabbing the file or the files that were extracted in step number 3. Then once we have that, we can go ahead and put that now into a zip file that's ready to go to Apple School Manager. And we're going to just use one of those utilities again. And just make sure that we're grabbing the files that were formatted for Apple School Manager in step 4. And at that point, we are ready to now move to step 6, which is going to go ahead and do that validation. So we got the validate Apple School Manager is our action. Again, the account is the Apple School Manager account. And then the configure is where we want to go ahead and start with the compressed file that was created there in step number 5. And this here is where our next action is a condition, where if there is not an error, we can proceed directly to go ahead and upload the zip file to Apple School Manager. And then it's just a matter of making sure that you grab the compressed file from step number 5. Now, if there is an error and we end up in this branch in our flow, you select to go ahead and do the patch of that CSV data. And then this here is where you can configure, you're grabbing the file from step 6, but then you can choose which of those 3 options you want to use for your patching. Like I said, more times than not, you're going to go ahead and use all 3 of those. Go ahead and run the validation one more time. This time, grabbing the file that was created there in step number 8. And then the final upload of the patched file. And just make sure that we're grabbing the patched file from step number 9. And then the last action is to just go ahead and stop the flow, because now that we're in that branch, we want to make sure that it knows it has reached the end. I would love to take credit for that flow, but I was on the phone with one of the Claris engineer. I forget what his exact title is, but Mark talked me and helped me land the plane, so we knew that everything was going to work the first time. And they will do the same for you if this is something that you want to try, because, like I said, they want to succeed, because that means everybody succeeds. Now here's some of that history that we talked about. You can see when the upload occurred, but then you can also drill in and see there's the overall success of the flow, but then you can look at each step to see what step might have failed. And in this case, there's got the little exclamation point there on the validation. You can review the report inline for what happened, or if you click the view button there, you could actually go ahead and export both the text report as a text file, and then actually grab the data that was used during that step if you want to get some more details. So here's what the text file looks like, where it says what it did, and it says, in the staff, it contains invalid emails. And it actually tells you what lines of the CSV that occurred. And so as we switch over here in just a moment to the CSV, which I have converted to an Excel file just to make it a little bit easier to see so that the columns are lined up. There we go. So like I said, this is what that particular CSV that it referenced in the error report. And as we scroll down here to lines, I believe 87 and 93, you can see that, why, yes, we do have missing email addresses for those particular teachers, which I don't know why their student information system didn't alert them that the email address was missing. It seems kind of obvious that that should happen. But luckily for us, Claris Connect went ahead and found the problem. Okay, so the last thing is Claris Studio. Like I said, this is the newest offering that they have. It's for doing stuff outside of your organization if you need to collect, anonymous forms and stuff like that. And so where we're looking at it within the school district is just a better way to get information from students, because it's usually one of two problems. Either the form didn't make it home or the completed form didn't make it back, right? And so we're looking at Claris Studio as a method to collect these forms. So it's maybe a field trip permission form, a sign up for the junior senior prom, or I've received my copy of the student handbook and will behave myself kind of thing. And so here's an example of what a student survey may look like. Like I said, this is the interface for Claris Studio. Now this here is starting with student information that has actually been pushed from the user file that we looked at into Studio, so we have access to that data. We didn't have to do anything to enter it. It's already there. It's obviously not all of the information, because for the sake of this, all we need are first and last name, student ID, grade level. Okay. So from this point, we can switch back over to our form. So if you've used like Google Forms or something like that, this is a very similar idea to that, but where we think the Claris Studio excels is that typically when you get that information in a Google form, now you've got to get it somewhere else to be able to do something with it, where this puts it right into FileMaker, which is our tool of choice for building reports and things. So here's the survey that we created. And what we wanted to do is, because there's information that we should know, we don't want to have the student have to re-enter information that they should know. And so we've set up a simple form with name, grade, graduation year, just a quick question. Did we get the information right? Are we the correct student? And then we have a couple of questions for what do you want your prom theme to be, as an example. And then a confirmation page. And so what we're able to do, which is as we share this form out, we're able to create a link and also have it pre-populate the data. And that's where we get into this idea of this creating the link for the pre-filled form, where we go in, we select, okay, well, what we want to pull information from, which again, this is our list of students. And then we just assign which table and field we want to have that data fill in from. So in this case, it is our student spreadsheet. And in this case, for student ID, we want to use student ID. And then we would just do that for each of the ones that we want to auto-populate. Sped it up here so you didn't have to watch me fat finger my way through trying to type those in. And then what is nice here is that it actually gives us the calculation that we need to include in our survey to make sure those fields are formatted. I'm not exactly sure what all of this means. I just accepted it was going to work. So I copied the calculation and then switched back over to my student table. And just a warning here, are you sure this is what you want to do? So we can go ahead and close that. And get back to our student list. And here we're going to go ahead and add a calculation field. and then go ahead and insert the calculation that we copied that Studio actually created for us. We just go ahead and create the field, put in the calculation, add that column. And so now we have a URL that is unique to that student or for any of the students that are in there. And then we can send out an email to that student with that link and say, complete this form. And then that pre-populated information is going to fill in for them. So I'll copy the URL that was generated, switch over here to Safari, drop that in. It takes me to that student information form. There's the information that I expected to see filled in. I can say that it is correct. Submit it. And then say, yes, I'm going to the prom, and of course I want to go to the enchantment under the sea dance for obvious reasons. And that's, I'm just showing off the ranking option here for data entry, because that's something you can't do in FileMaker, but you can do in Studio, which is, I thought was cool. So that's a simple example of one of the Claris Studio forms. Like I said, our survey is also a Claris Studio form if you want to fill out a Studio form yourself. All right. And so from this point, all we have to do now is we can add a new view here in Studio to view the data here, which is we'll just go ahead and set it up as a spreadsheet view, make sure we're getting the information that came in from our survey. Go ahead and give it a name. Very original survey spreadsheet. Create it. Now we're able to view the data here, obviously, but then because of how Studio and FileMaker work together, we can actually pull this information now down into FileMaker and do additional things with it there. So I asked Phil, who's the technology director at New Kensington, if he had a quote for me that I could share. And this is what he had, was that 15 minutes after building the flow and entering the correct credentials, information started flowing. I don't have to worry about it anymore because it just works. And I think regardless of what system we're working in, if we're able to say it just works, that's a pretty good endorsement of what we're able to do. Now, much to Dawn's dismay, because of all the work like my team with FileMaker has been able to do for the school, they presented me with this. That I'm their favorite, and so if you want to be your favorite, your organization's favorite too, definitely check out what FileMaker can do for your organization. So just some going back to Apple School Manager here as we close up. You can find resources. There is a user guide in Apple School Manager that also talks about how you can get your system connected with the SIS to pull that information over. Also at asm.claris.com, there is a place to fill out a form if you need help integrating with Apple School Manager, and someone from Claris will contact you directly. As far as, like I said, they have a success team in place because they want this to succeed. Obviously, you can contact myself or anyone at Cross IT, and we'll make sure that you get in contact with the proper person. And there's also the Claris knowledge base, the FAQs and checklists as sources for additional information. Here's my email address if you wanted to reach out to me. Like I said, if I can't answer the question, I know people at Claris that will be happy to answer your question. So you can check that out. And actually went a little bit faster than I expected, so we have plenty of time for Q&A. Not that you have to have questions, but if you do, we can take questions. Just if you do, give me time to throw the box thing at you so they can pick up your voice for the recording. So, any questions? Okay, like I said, if you think of a question later and it's like, oh, I wish I would have asked that, we do have a booth down in the sponsor aisle there, so please stop by. If you currently already use FileMaker and want a cool sign that has a lot of the FileMaker shortcuts on it, please stop by. We'd be happy to share one of those with you. Here is the link to the feedback survey, which you can also get on schedule, but this will also take you to that as well. If you have any problems with how to answer any of these survey questions, I'd be happy to help with that as well. And thank you for your attention. I hope it was enlightening.